Minister, I would like to start by thanking Brian O'Donnell and Mairead McGrath for putting this motion together with our rural independent group. Minister, our motion today is very clear-cut. To every politician here in Dáil Éireann, to TDs and senators, but also very clear to every Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael councillor who will be knocking on the door of every rural farmer and urban door in this country. People who depend on having top-quality Irish milk and meat, which Ireland has up to now delivered. If this government will not clearly support this motion, let there be no doubt to any farmer out there that these politicians or their party has either destroyed or will destroy their farm income or cease operations in many viable, well-run farms throughout Ireland. This motion is extremely clear. We, the Rural Independent Group, will call on Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, the Green Government to categorically, once and for all, declare that they will not pursue a compulsory or voluntary cull of the national herd, with no introduction of any caps on any Irish cows or beef numbers. Our motion also calls to review the process of calculating methane emissions, considering the cycle effect, and provide funding to farmers for implementing greater efficiency, embracing new technology and other means as an alternative plan to reducing the national herd. Our motion calls for the Minister to undertake an independent, comprehensive financial impact assessment of reducing the national dairy herd, considering the impact on each farmer and the rural economy, and breakdown to show the negative financial consequences for each county. Our motion calls on the Government to cease their continuous attack on Irish farm families, who are the backbone of the agri-food sector, to prevent future generations from being driven out of the sector and compromising the sustainability of rural communities. And most importantly, this motion, if not supported, will see if Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael are with the farmers, as it is clear in our motion that the Minister for Agriculture, Food and Marine must publicly announce a pause on discussions or considerations of a dairy or beef sector cull until a full financial impact assessment has been published, considering the views of all affected farmers. Our motion also calls for the prompt payment of the £28 million approved beef welfare scheme as part of the budget 2023 as promised. And most importantly, our motion calls for the extend the current nitrates derogation for Irish farmers until 2030 and submit a compelling case to the European Commission in support of this proposal. Minister, I have clearly outlined our motion. Anything less than 100% support of this motion by your government will make it clear to every dairy and beef farmer that the writing is on the wall. Farm organisations like the IFA, the ICSA, the ICMSA and others have spoken to us of the crisis that will hit their members if you go ahead with your mad targets. Farmers have told us what damage you will do to the environmentally friendly farms, the length and breadth of this country in Ireland. I was asked and intended what I would call a modest farm, not in my own constituency, but in Fernand's, Cork recently. This married farmer with young children is running a meticulously run farm. He has 78 to 79 cows and works his farm to perfection. If your government plans goes ahead, he said he will have to cut down to 65 cows for a farm that has the potential to expand. This means wipeout. And he said it, and I didn't, and I reiterate what he said, he will face closure. The anger was palpable by all farmers who attended that day with the government. And they told me, what they said in public, not to me personally, but to me personally and others, was that this government are treating them like environmental terrorists. I spoke to one of many farmers who wanted to build a new parlour recently. He rang telling me he had a grant approved, also approved a loan from the bank, asking me would his farm practice be allowed to expand. And after I explained what we were hearing coming from government, he said he would pull the plug the next morning on his plans, as you can't invest in something you don't know what the future lies. The best we are hearing from Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil politicians is hang on till the budget. So it looks to me there will be a short-term sweetener, something like a decommissioning fishing deal, thrown at the farmers, so they get rid of cows, a sweetener that, like always, has strings attached, basically get rid of farmers. Culling or killing cows is not the solution. Minister, to reduce CO2 emissions, the government's relentless attack on farmers and their livelihoods, coupled with its plan to decrease the number of cows and cattle in Ireland, will only result in more imported meat flooding the market. It's disheartening to see that beef imports to Ireland are on the rise, with 54,000 tonnes valued at 183 million imported in 2022, a 17% increase from the previous year. These figures show everything we have said about the way the agriculture is run in this country is true. Even in the first 3 months of this year, 14,119 tonnes of beef have been imported, surpassing the record levels of imported beef seen in 2022. This surge in imports. The government insists that Ireland needs to reduce its cow population to meet climate change commitments. This cow cull is based on the climate action legislation, which mandates a 25% reduction in emissions from Irish agriculture by 2030. Comparatively, France's agricultural sector is only required to reduce emissions by 20%. And in Germany, where a Green Party is in power, the farmers are expected to reduce emissions by 17% over the same period. This all reminds me of the fishery deal done by the Irish government in Brexit, which basically we gave the most at huge expense to the Irish fishing sector, which has other European countries simply laughing at us. It is evident that the Irish government is unfairly burdening Irish farmers, far more than any other EU country. The Rural Independent Group was the only group to oppose the vote against the climate action legislation 2021, warning that the catastrophic consequences it would have on farmers and rural communities. Sadly, our warnings were dismissed as scaremongering, but now we witness the devastating effects as the government assault on productive agriculture is gaining speed and unfolding. The treatment of our farmers by Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael and the Green Party is both cruel and deceitful. They punish farmers while turning a blind eye to the tech giants, allowing them to expand their data centres and operate without any restraints. It is deeply concerning that all three major political parties, along with the numerous left-wing TDs, are willing to jeopardise our sustainable farming model and compromise our food sovereignty under the guise of combating climate change or attempting to manipulate the weather. This short-sighted approach not only undermines the hard work and dedication of our farmers, but also poses a significant threat to the long-term viability of our agricultural sector. It is imperative that we prioritise informed decision-making and consider the broader consequences of our actions before hastily sacrificing the very foundation of our agricultural heritage. The recent decision by the Minister of Agriculture in Ireland to establish a cow cull committee within his department with the intention of culling hundreds of thousands of dairy cows in the name of climate change has sparked widespread concern and condemnation. Farmers, rural communities and even media outlets from across the globe, including countries such as India, Canada, the US, Australia, Mexico and the UK, France and Germany, among others, have expressed incredulity at such a policy proposal. As a matter of fact, I was flicking through channels the other night, and the US channel, they were in stitches at what Ireland was proposing. The Irish government against their own Irish farmers. They couldn't understand it. They were in stitches laughing, presenters were. Many experts argue that the culling of Irish dairy cows will have absolutely no impact whatsoever on global greenhouse gas emissions, while posing significant risks to farmers' livelihoods and rural communities. The call to reconsider these government policies has grown louder as other countries increase their own cow herds, thereby undermining any potential global benefits. It is increasingly evident that such measures urgently need to be shelved and halted immediately. The Minister for Agriculture and the Government may try to disguise the cow cull as a voluntary reduction in Ireland's cow numbers, but the truth is that any decrease in cow population will have severe and lasting negative consequences for rural communities. We only need to look at the fishing industry, which has been devastated by the so-called voluntary exit schemes over the past decade, tearing apart the fabric of coastal towns and villages. Minister McConnell has a track record of shutting down viable operations, as evidenced by his covert dismantling of the fishing sector. It's difficult to trust any minister when he offers empty and deceptive words regarding the cow cull, all in an effort to retain power and appease the Green Party. In last week's front page of the Irish Farmers' Journals, they stated that the cow cull plan could cost the dairy farmers $2,500 per year. New analysis, they stated, puts the farm-level costs at a herd reduction scheme to be around €39 million in total. This multi-million figure does not include the downstream effect on the rural economy of reducing Ireland's dairy output, which could multiple to €39 million. Culling cows from the dairy and beef sector will have devastating consequences for so many farmers who are deep in debt at this time. I myself see farmers frantically buying and putting themselves land and putting themselves deeper and deeper in debt. but doing this to try and stay ahead of the horrendous changes being forced on them. And sadly, for many, not knowing the future as they wait to hear the next daft notion the Greens have had with Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael in agreement. It's time us to come clean with the farmers, the very people who are you are meant to represent. Are you going to continue to force Irish farmers into mad, erratic cuts each set, or will you step out of the daft trance year in and stand by your constituents, your neighbours and your friends and force a positive future for Irish farmers and stop pointing the finger by treating them like environmental terrorists?